This week, the Finance Minister delivered some good news to taxpayers. This included increasing the limit on tax-free savings accounts. The tax-free threshold has also been increased from 79,000 rand to 83,000 rand. However, there were some worrying announcements. The education and health sectors received decreased allocations. So what do so many of these announcements in this budget allocations mean for us ordinary citizens? To unpack some of that in Budget 2020, I'm joined now by Punki Modise, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Absa's Retail and Business Bank. Punki, thank you so much for joining us. It must have been a very, very busy week for you and your team this week, just trying to dissect what the ramifications are of this week's budget, or this year's big budget speech. But let's start with South Africa's taxpayers, who of course will be feeling the ramifications and therefore have an impact perhaps on their banking practices. And our taxpayers have been doing the heavy lifting for some time now. And the announcements made by the Finance Minister, some have welcomed the tax relief, but others have said more could have been done. In real terms, what kind of impact will that tax relief have on ordinary South Africans?
Okay. Thanks a lot, Marcel. I think for me it was actually a welcome relief, the news coming out of the minister. And it's more from a perspective that the general consensus in the market was that we should be expecting an increase, particularly in VAT, which was of concern, given the fact that we're in a very tough macroeconomic environment at this point in time. So if you look at the minister and what he had to say about the budget is that some of the people, for example, someone who's earning 100,000 per annum, will be saving about 10% in terms of taxes. So that was, for me, a welcome relief. And I think, if I look at the macro and where it finds itself, my sense is that, both consumer as well as business confidence will get some level of bolstering because of the positive news that came out of the budget from the minister.
There was a small reference in the speech also to an increase in the limit on tax-free savings accounts. It wasn't a big announcement or a big part of the budget speech, but for many it will make a difference. Can we, however, say that the Finance Minister is closer to winning this battle to get South Africans to save? Because if you speak to people in your office or around the braai or in your family, people will say, in fact, just in the makeup room this morning, people were saying, but there is nothing left to save. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion on it is that, these things are a journey. We've always got to look back at where we are coming from. And I think the government and the minister have done quite a lot, to date in terms of improving the culture of savings. And this is one of the initiatives in my mind that will also go a long way in terms of, helping people to stretch the limited budgets that they have at their disposal. And I think the second aspect of it is that you always have to consider, some of the changes that the government is also looking to implement. If from a banking service point of view, I look at the, resolution framework that we currently have in place, where the minister is also looking at, ways to introduce and establish a deposit insurance scheme. Those things go a long way, in terms of helping from an improving culture of savings. And I think critical to that is that, it cannot just be a job that's left to the minister. We also have a job and a role to play in that. This is also big, when it comes to the culture shift that we need to be making in our own minds around, how do we approach this aspect of things. And I think core to it is one needs to think heavily around, your spend patterns. How do you spend your money? Do you spend most of your money, in getting instant gratification, or do you spend most of your money, in getting delayed gratification? So those are the choices that, an individual has to make. And once we start to make those choices, they go a long way in terms of ensuring that, you drive your own, ways of spending your money more wisely.
And that instant gratification is a real thing. If you think about how many of us say, you know what, I'm paying all my bills. There's nothing much to go around. YOLO, you only live once. I'm going to go on this holiday and worry about the credit score a little bit later on. Now, you are with one of South Africa's biggest banks, so I cannot let you go without asking you about one of the big talking points coming out of the budget speech and the announcement of the establishment of that new state bank. There's been a lot of talk about it before that, but finally this announcement in the budget speech. And to quote, that the state bank's architecture will be that of a retail bank operating on commercial principles. Now, there was a bit of raising of the eyebrows in the banking sector, with government saying that they believe that this is the best way to service the banking needs of the poor, those in rural areas, and small businesses have been finding it difficult to access money to grow their businesses or to even start their businesses. Is government biting off too much here?
I think, in this particular instance, we have to look at the banking system. First of all, I think South Africa has got a well-regulated and a sound financial system. And we saw, how South Africa weathered the storm during the global crisis in 2008. We managed really to ride that wave and ride it in the right way because of the banking system that we have. So we've got to acknowledge that, as a first thing. And then secondly, I think as a sector, we are all conscious of the fact that financial inclusion is a great pillar in terms of ensuring that you pull all the population, the entire population of the country into the overall banking mainstream. And our initiatives largely focus on ensuring that we solve that problem sustainably. And I think financial inclusion is not only a South Africa problem. I think globally, in general, financial inclusion is a challenge. But if I look at some of the initiatives that we do from an Absa point of view, is that when I look at Absa as a bank, we largely service a wide spectrum of customers across, South Africa. And then the second thing that we do is that we've got a myriad of products that span between lending, insuring, saving, as well as transacting, to help with the varied needs of our customers. And then at the same time, how we do that is we always consider our reach as one of the critical pillars to enabling financial inclusion. So as part of that, we've got a wide range of distribution networks which spans between branches and, if I look at the investments that we're making in Absa, we really investing significantly also in improving our digital capabilities, because through that we find that you augment, access to financial services. So I would say that there's a lot that's currently being done, to ensure that financial inclusion is solved for at an industry level. And when I look at also competition, from a competition point of view, we've never seen this much heat in the market, particularly to ensure that we effectively bank those people that are not included in the financial system at this point in time.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but very quickly, if I can ask you before I let you go, there have been some criticism of the budget speech saying that some said it was pro-middle class and anti-poor, but really at the core of it is families from all backgrounds and different financial brackets who are struggling more so than most to keep food on the table. Now, when you're dealing as a bank with families struggling in a way like that, what is your advice to them if they have to start taking those first steps to get out of financial strife?
I think the first step to take is largely acknowledging, that you've got a challenge as an individual. And once you acknowledge that you've got a challenge, as far as it relates to how you're managing maybe your financial requirements, then you go on to coming up with a plan. And as part of that plan, you've got to have critical validation measures and, reinforced measures for yourself, And I think the second aspect of it is that as banks, we've got programs in play that we utilize to help customers, who are in distress. So my advice largely would be, if you realize that you are in distress, rather go to your bank, speak to your banker. And if I look at Absa, from an Absa point of view, we've got mechanisms that we utilize to help those customers that are in distress. And we always encourage our customers to approach us early on in the process before it becomes too late. So in my view, mechanisms are there, and customers need to just inquire if they're not clear, and then they'll be given the right level of guidance.
As in many things in life, put up your hand and ask for help if you find no way out. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Punki Modise, is the Chief Financial Officer at Absa's Retail and Business Bank. Thank you so much for your time this morning.